By the time I found out that she was up for adoption, she was dead set on, no, I need to just be realistic about my life and what my future holds.
That's when she came to me and she said, would you be interested in us adopting you? I didn't think that I would have a family again. I didn't think that I would go to college. I didn't think that I would have love. And with that, I just feel like my world is just so much brighter.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's Angel's Garage. This is November, and November is National Adoption Awareness Month. And we wanted to bring back somebody that was on our very first episode this season, somebody extremely cool, has a great 69 Cougar. And he brought his lovely mother, Miss Dyna Mitte, Mr. RJ Mitte, and his mother, Miss Dana.
Hi,
How are you?
so glad to be here.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming back to the show.
And you're back today because we are talking adoption, and you, Miss Dana, have been so wonderful to share your story that you had adopted Mr. RJ, and if you could tell us about it.
Well, in my early 20s, I had cervical cancer, and so after that, I was told I would not have children. And although my husband and I went through the fertility specialist and on tried, we were not able to. So, as it is, we started looking into adoption, and we looked into foster care and different means. And in the middle of all of this, we got a phone call from Jackson, Mississippi, where we own some businesses, and it was an attorney that rented in our building and said, we have a young lady who was going to keep her baby. It's going to be born in the next month. She's decided now she cannot keep it, and we need to find a family. And one of the tenants told us that y'all were looking into adoption. And so he said, could we sit down and have this conversation? So we did. And part of it was they needed to find a family that could come through. She had a lot of medical expenses. One thing that we offered up that we thought was important for the mom was to get her therapy to deal with the adoption, and so she could understand, what we wanted to understand what she was going through as well as what we were going to be going through. And we wanted to make sure that she was okay with it and that she had the help that she needed to adjust to her giving her child up and thinking of that child first. And so we adopted, and it was a wonderful thing. I remember the day picking him up and taking him home, and the whole family being ecstatic, and us not wanting, we wanted to surprise everyone, and everyone was ecstatic. And all of his grandparents on both sides were just crazy about it. I mean, everybody just kind of fought over who was going to get to hold him first, and it was a wonderful experience. And I don't think did you feel any different whether you give birth to that child or you're taking that child home? I mean, it's an instant bond and connection, and there's your child. You go through life that way.
How proud you must be that he's just excelled in his craft.
He has. In everything that he does.
In everything he does.
He was my child that walked around carrying a children's encyclopedia. And that's what he read as his book. And even before he could read, he would look at the pictures and talk about it. And so different things that he's decided to do in his life, he always tends to excel because he goes that extra mile looking into it and studying it.
Oh, that's great. That really is. Yeah.
As is his love for cars, and y'all discussing different motorcycles he would like to build, and
That's good. And go ahead, Andrew. There's gonna be a lot of yes. Right now, Andrew's in my ear, so give me a second. RJ, would you like to share your story with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, yeah. I know no different life in my mom other than my mom right here, and we have very limited information, but I didn't find out until I was around 6 that I was adopted, and I actually heard through my stepbrother. My mom and stepdad at the time were talking, and he found out, and it was a very interesting situation. And I was like, "What's he talking about?" My mom was like, "Well, yeah, you kind of are adopted," and I mean, and really, that was kind of the encompass of our conversation of it. We're like, "Okay, cool." And moved on. It was never really something that, there's some people that really are into finding that heritage and stuff, and then I guess there's me where I got enough problems. I'm good. Yeah. So I think I'm a big believer in adoption, and I think it's so important to be able to put yourself out there, and there's a lot of people like my mom that go through the same thing, and they're on the fence of adopting or not, or do I keep trying to go through all these medical things? And I find sometimes, you have to go through these things to figure out who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do in life and the lives that you affect along the way. And I think that's something that we tend to forget, that we're all trying to find a family in a community, and there's individuals like myself and people that may not have the ability to have their initial birth family, but it doesn't mean that they're going to lose their family, Right.
In fact, I always told RJ, I said, I respect the decisions your mom made. And even though it was a closed adoption because of the state we adopted through, I told him, I said, if you ever decided to find her, I would help, because I don't have anything but respect for her. Right. That's not something he's pursued to this point, but if he ever did, I think, there's no problem there. And I think, for children that are waiting for families and all too, there's someone out there for you, and there is a family that will be there when you're ready for that family, and they're ready for you, and you make those connections. So.
Now, have any families ever reached out to you guys before with adoption like that, knowing your story?
I've had a lot of young ladies talk to me. One that were trying to make a decision whether to give their child up or place it in adoption, or whether they were going to keep it.
And it's got to be hard. You seem like you've got a really good head on your shoulders and a wide heart that's open for that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I think
be able to talk to somebody like you.
I think it takes a lot for a woman to go through that, and a lot for them to accept that, hey, maybe I can't give my child the life it needs, but there's a family that maybe I can give it to. And for them to make that decision is a very tough one. And so that's why, for me, I chose to pay for therapy for a year, for her to get what she needed after, because I knew there was going to be ups and downs. And I think, also there's been families that have reached out that were considering adoption. I was like, I've had, after I adopted RJ, he has a sibling that is my biological child that years later I got pregnant and had a baby when I wasn't. Yeah. So there's no difference between, my love does not change between one or the other. The closeness is there, and even between the siblings, the closeness is there, and that bond is there. So, for adopting, there's no difference. I mean, and that's what I tell the families that are looking. I'm like, if you're ready to accept a child, and you're ready, whether it's boy, girl, whatever race, whatever, if your heart's open, then you're ready to be a parent and be there through thick and thin. So
I'm good.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Well, it's people like you that Mark and I decided to donate this 41 Ford to the Dave Thomas Foundation, because it look at what's you got a beautiful son. He's happy with his mother, and it's just a beautiful story. It's really emotional. It is.
It shows the love. It shows the love, of the family, and it shows love of cars and how everything can kind of come together that way.
Well, if you can make that kind of comment, why don't you tease us today with what your tip is?
Today, remember, one man's trash is another man's treasure. Today, don't throw away your used tires. We'll get back to you with the tip of the week on that.
Oh, you got something. Okay. We'll be right back.
We're going to walk you through what to do with your recycled tires. First off, don't throw them away, because if they still hold air, you can at least use them as rollables for your projects around your shop. Number 2, you can also use them for an engine stand. Stack them on top of each other, put them on a wood pallet, you've got your own homemade engine stand. When you're on a budget, that means usually that you've got little or no money. Engine stands can cost a lot of money. Tires that are already worn out don't cost you a thing. Put them to good use. The last thing we're going to show you that you can do with your recycled tires or old tires is to repair a muffler clamp, or a muffler hanger rather. You just use it and trace it out on the tire and cut your piece of tire out, and usually it's stronger because it's actually got the pieces of metal through the tire. So this is always cheaper route rather than taking your money, your hard-earned dollars, and buying parts that you really don't need. You just need to repair the ones that you have. That's how you build on a budget, here on Mark's Minutes.
We went to look for school clothes. And I remember I'm just helping her put on different clothes, and she looked at me and she said, "Mommy, I never thought I would have clothes like this." You know, it's not about having clothes or money, but the fact that she was appreciative of it was what meant a lot to me.
Hannah, she had never had a play date with a friend, ever. She'd never had sleepovers, ever. For someone her age to wait that long to have to go.
To watch a kid who never knew what it meant to be safe at home to wanting to be home and be around people that love her. Almost as special as the big things is just the little things.
Angel's Garage, the podcast, is brought to you by My Travel Tray. Life on the go just got easier. And by Haymaker Coffee Company. Grab life by the beans. And by Ford Gum since 1913.
Welcome back, everyone. And as promised, we have a special guest. It's Miss Rita from the Dave Thomas Foundation. Hi, Miss Rita. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm glad you were able to join us. And I would like to ask you a few questions here. I was going to ask you, what is the mission of the Dave Thomas Foundation?
Sure. First, thanks for having us on. The Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption is a national nonprofit public charity, and we've got a singular mission to dramatically increase the adoptions of children who are in the foster care system waiting for adoptive families. That's what we do each and every day.
And is this, how many are waiting? How many children are waiting to be adopted?
So in this country right now, children go into foster care because they've been abused or neglected. And typically our job is to get them home, right? To make sure families have services in place and they can be safe at home. But for about 122,000 children right now in the United States, their abuse was so egregious. And even with the work that surrounded these families, the families couldn't be made safe. So those children were permanently and legally separated from their family of origin. So today, as we're sitting here, 120,000 children are waiting for families.
That's staggering.
It is. And how does a child become available to be adopted? Is there a process or?
There is, and you know, it's a complex system. It's a complex conversation. These are children who, through no fault of their own, they've been abused or neglected or abandoned, and they've moved into this child welfare system, and judges are involved and social workers are involved. And the work really is to see if homes can be made safe. Can these children go home? Because they belong first in their family of origin. But if they can't, then it's a judge that ultimately makes a legal decision and terminates the parental rights, which simply means the child's a legal orphan in this country. And then they begin to wait for another family to step forward and adopt them.
Wow. Does the foundation focuses on teens and sibling groups and children with special needs? Is that an area that you focus on to make sure that these children have a chance at finding a forever home?
It is. Children in foster care at all ages, from birth to 18. But the reality is, in this country, by the time a child turns about 9 in foster care and they've been freed for adoption, their likelihood of being adopted decreases significantly. So the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption stepped in and decided to help fill that gap of children age 9 and older, children in sibling groups, children with special needs, children who've been in care for so long, they resist this notion of family and of permanency. And these are the kids that are most likely to turn 18 and leave foster care without the family we promised them. Last year, about 20,000 children turned 18 and left foster care without a family. And that's what we're trying to stop and make sure that every child, whether they're 2 or 18, deserves a family, and we can find families for those children.
Okay, quick question. If I can't adopt a child, how could I help the Dave Thomas Foundation?
All kinds of ways. People can step forward and become foster parents and not necessarily adoptive parents. They can volunteer with agencies. They can connect to the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption and simply learn more about this conversation and talk about it. We're a nonprofit agency. They can make donations to the foundation or to other organizations that focus on children.
This is Dyna Mitte.
Hi, nice to meet you.
She is the lovely mother of RJ, and I wanted to connect you two and see if you all had...
Yeah, I love what you're doing. I think it's great. RJ was adopted when he was born, and then I soon learned that he had a disability, and I'm just grateful every day. I feel like God placed him in my home as his mother. I was chosen to be his mom, and I'm so grateful for it. And I know there's so many kids out there that need homes, and I'm certainly going to look into it and see what I can do to help. I don't know what that might be, but I certainly feel I could maybe lend in the disability end or something, because I've been there and worked through it. So
that's great. What would you say to someone that's thinking about it but maybe is hesitating? What has adoption meant to you, and how could you maybe have somebody feel a little bit more comfortable about it?
I tell everyone this story. When I adopted RJ, and I knew early on he was super smart and he talked early. And when he started talking, he didn't start with one word. It was like 3 words, and he walked by 9 months. But I knew he did things a little different. And so once we went through the diagnosis, everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, he's adopted. Would you have adopted him if you knew?" And I told him I wouldn't have changed anything. I mean, he's my son. If you birth a child, would you change anything about them? And of course not. And I think when you're chosen to be a parent, maybe those are things I needed to learn and grow in. And so you grow together. And I think no matter what, there's children with disabilities that should have great homes, and the parents need to be equipped and learn and grow with those kids and work with them. And we incorporated everything into our home for his special needs in. So if RJ had to fold towels for OT, then we all folded towels for OT. If RJ had to do one snake slid up the slide for speech therapy, we all did it. So it became a family project. And I think, those kids thrive in homes just as well as any other kid. So I tell everyone, I think if your heart's there and you can provide that home, there is no better gift in life than you to provide that home and grow with that child.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
So Miss Rita, do you have any questions for RJ?
Sure. RJ, can you talk a little bit about what adoption means to you?
Yeah, I mean, I was very different, and as you were talking, a lot older kids being adopted and kind of having that misplacement. I was very lucky to be adopted at birth. So for a lot of my life, I didn't know I was adopted. And we were talking a little bit about that earlier, on how I found out that I was adopted. But when I did it wasn't something that was really relevant after the fact. And because I had my family, I had my mom. It wasn't like, and I don't know, I'm a closed adoption, so I don't have any record of my biological history or family in that realm. But really, I've never had that urge to go find that and do that because I have my family. And I think it's so important that we have organizations like you that are working to get and build families and communities. Because one of our biggest issues in our world that I believe is the lack of community and the lack of family. And we have such a saturation of that, that we need to help build families and communities. And part of that's having a strong, healthy foundation to grow from and to have that family with. So I think it's one of the most important things that we have in our life, to provide these opportunities for maybe if you can't have a kid to be able to adopt and to foster and to build that family, or vice versa, to not have that family and lack of. But it's so important, and I'm so grateful for organizations like you that make that impact and make that difference every day. So thank you.
Can I ask one more quick question?
Of course.
What might you say to a teenager that's in foster care thinking, I don't know if I'll ever be adopted? What could you say to them?
It's hard because there's that age out period, right? But the thing is never stop hoping for a family. Never stop looking for your family. Yes, you may not be part of the program at a certain point, but it doesn't mean you can't find your family. And at the end of the day, don't give up hope, and look for that. Don't try to have open minds. Try to be willing to look into someone else's life, and you may not respect them, you may not like them, but realize the opportunity that they're giving you to try to make your life better. It may not be the life you wanted or living through, but it doesn't mean you have to live that way forever. So,
and I think a big thing too is that at whatever age, it's a two-way street, and that as much as the family's wanting to bring you in and be a part, you need to participate and be a part, and make it where you're open to communication and be able to talk and work through merging that as a family too.
Well, I'm so grateful that you all are willing to share your story and give hope and encouragement to so many children out there. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, we work on cars and I'm crying. So we'll be back after this message.
We went to look for school clothes. And I remember just helping her put on different clothes, and she looked at me and she said, "Mommy, I never thought I would have clothes like this." It's not about having clothes or money, but the fact that she was appreciative of it was what meant a lot to me.
Hannah, she had never had a play date with a friend, ever. She'd never had sleepovers, ever. For someone her age to wait that long to have to go.
To watch a kid who never knew what it meant to be safe at home to wanting to be home and be around people that love her. Almost as special as the big things is just the little things.
Angel's Garage, the podcast, is brought to you by My Travel Tray. Life on the go just got easier. And by Haymaker Coffee Company. Grab life by the beans. And by Ford Gum since 1913.
So today we're going to show you tips about how to use a paint gauge, how to identify incorrect bodywork, and how to rectify that with a copper spoon when you're welding. The purpose of a paint gauge is to show you how thick the paint or filler underneath to the metal is. They can range anywhere from $20 all the way up to hundreds of dollars, so be careful which ones you buy. There is a limit as to you're wasting your money. Some of the ones that are moderately priced do just as good of a job as the ones that are super expensive. As you can see, Angela with her fancy nails is displaying the model here that we like to use in our shop. But her nails are so thick that the paint gauge won't stick there either. As we're chipping away and getting the old nasty filler off of here, we discovered the cause of it. Mr. Ugly, rust underneath everywhere, popping off the filler and paint. Oh boy. So if you use a sharp chisel and you keep it level to the metal, it'll save you a lot of time, it'll save you a lot of money in sandpaper. The next step is going to be sanding off any kind of old nasty welds, grinding all that off and getting the metal clean again. As you can see from the fender that we're working on, we've discovered some really bad welds and some really bad rust underneath. I like to use a copper spoon as a backer because the weld does not stick to the copper, but it gives you a surface that the weld stops where you want it to. I got the piece of copper from the recycling yard. Once I told the gentleman what I was doing with it, he gave it to me for free. Now I'm going to show you how to start tacking your fender in place and how to start welding. So I like to start in the middle of the panel, because that way you can work your warps out to either side. As the metal grows or changes its direction, you can work it still. If you start on the outsides, you're already screwed. And that's how you build on a budget today on Mark's Minutes.
And we're back. And while we were on commercial, Miss Dana was sharing a little tidbit about Wendy's. Dana?
So when we first moved to LA and our budget was very tight, my big thing was there was a Wendy's across the street from us. So we would every week take the kids, I'd walk them across the street, and they could pick whatever they wanted off of the dollar menu. So it was a big splurge, but they didn't know any better, and it was great. So Wendy's, really helped us with our budgeting. So it was great.
And with that being said, Wendy's decided not to have you walk to them, but them to walk to you. Thank you to our sponsors, Wendy's. Thank you to Miss Dana Banana. I love you. And RJ Mitte.
Definitely. Thank you.
And thank you, Miss Ashley. Say hello, Ashley.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week on another edition of Angel's Garage.
By the time I found out that she was up for adoption, she was dead set on, no, I need to just be realistic about my life and what my future holds.
That's when she came to me and she said, would you be interested in us adopting you? I didn't think that I would have a family again. I didn't think that I would go to college. I didn't think that I would have love. And with that, I just feel like my world is just so much brighter.